What's good, internet? My name is JB, and it is time for another Pokemon Unite tier list. Today, we're going to be ranking every Pokemon in the game based on mostly solo, duo, trio queue, as that's all I play, as well as this is post Gyarados release. So we're going to be ranking that new guy, as well as, just some other things and my general opinions on the meta as a whole. Went ahead and switched the tiers up a little bit because, well, I don't know, it just feels more accurate to do it this way. We have our S+ tier, which is going to be the most broken of all broken Pokemon. We have our S tier, which is just really very good Pokemon that are always going to be just a notch above others. We have our A tier, which are generally just great Pokemon, but have a couple flaws, or they're just better Pokemon at the same role. B tier, which is just going to be your middle of the road, not good, not bad, whatever. We have our C tier, which is just going to be things that are fine, but there are stuff that is certainly better, and there's nothing that really stands out about anything in C tier. And then we don't really need D and F tier, so we're just going to get rid of the F tier in general, because I don't really think there are any Pokemon that are super deserving of that, and we'll just go with a D tier instead. So that is how we're going to roll that, and the D tier is going to be Pokemon that may not necessarily be the worst in the game, but could certainly use a buff, and that's how we're going to use D tier. So let's go ahead and get into it. We'll start off with our Speedsters. All right, so we're just going to leave them all in S+ for now, but obviously that's not where they're going to go. It's just easier for me to edit this way. So we're going to start off with Gengar. I think Gengar is honestly probably a B tier Pokemon, borderlining C tier. I think the main problem with Gengar is the fact that a lot of people like playing it in lane, and it is an awful laner. But also, it's a character that if you get a level lead on, and if you start snowballing, it is one of the best Pokemon in the game with a huge level lead if you are dominating that way. So I'm willing to give it B tier, but I don't think it's that much higher than B. And since I'm changing how tier list works a little bit, I think B tier is fine for it. I also think B tier is totally fine and reasonable for Absol. Absol is just a really strong early game Pokemon that has an okay late game. It's another Pokemon that, is very, very good with a huge level lead when you're snowballing a game, but it's less great when, you're kind of struggling. And oftentimes you do sort of, I'm going to call a mulligan early. I'm going to move both of these Pokemon down to C tier. They're both totally fine, totally viable Pokemon. It's just, I think they are the two worst Speedsters currently. Getting back to Absol, though, is a character that is really solid with a level lead, and it has a little bit more team fight going for it. I think it has a better Unite move than Gengar. I think both their Unite moves are kind of mid. I think Absol is playable in lane, but a very good jungler. I think Absol is just a little bit more of a lane bully, a little bit more of an early game bully, while Gengar, you need to be ahead in the game, whereas on Absol, you can kind of just, you can get your team a lead early, and that could sometimes be enough depending on what the rest of your team is doing. But yeah, I think C tier is fine. And the reason I gave both of these guys C tier is I think Talonflame and Zeraora are both honestly B tier Pokemon. I think they're a step above. Talonflame is honestly pretty underrated right now, which is coming from me. If you guys have been around the channel for a minute, is an insane thing for me to say. I've been one of the biggest Talonflame haters there ever has been, but Talonflame is actually in a pretty good place right now. I still think it has one of, if not the worst player bases of any character in the game. I think the people who play Talonflame are generally pretty bad, but the character itself, when played properly and when used well in team fights, is actually very strong. Fly is great, Brave Bird's great, both builds are fine. It's just a really solid Pokemon. And then Zeraora, I think Zeraora is super underrated, super underappreciated. I think Wild Charge is still one of the most broken moves in the game. Like, you can go back probably 2 years on this channel, watch any tier list video, and I will tell you how broken I think Wild Charge is. And they buffed Wild Charge recently. It's not as overpowered as I thought it would be, but it is still incredibly frustrating when you see a good Wild Charge Zeraora. It's better Mimikyu play rough, essentially. And I don't know why they thought it was a good idea to give something invincibility, but hey, here we are. Now Dodrio. I think Dodrio, even after the nerf to Drill Peck, is still an A tier Pokemon. You guys probably know that the Tri-Tech build has one of the highest win rates in the game, and I've been messing around with it quite a bit, and still to this day, like, despite being one of the highest skill ceiling Pokemon in the game and a very, very strong Pokemon, everything in the game counters Dodrio. Like, try 1v1ing an Eldegoss as Dodrio without a Comfey. You'll lose every single time. Dodrio is great Pokemon, but literally every single thing in the game counters it because you can get rid of its Spring Gauge. Like, I understand, you're getting diffed by Dodrio, or you're getting diffed by Dodrio Comfey, but that's a Comfey problem more so than a Dodrio problem. I think Dodrio is a very good Pokemon, but nothing too super incredible about it. Now, Leafeon, however, I think I'm willing to give Leafeon S tier. Certainly in competitive play, it's an S tier Pokemon, but even in solo duo trio, getting level 4 Evos is incredibly broken. That's, if you watch my hot take video, my hot take is that all EVs should evolve at 5 because that's how broken level 4 evolutions are. Especially getting a huge power spike on something like Leafeon in particular, because Solar Blade is insane at level 4. Razor Leaf, also pretty decent. Leaf Blade, I think, yeah, Leaf Blade's the circle dash move. That move is very good as well. Yeah, Leafeon is incredible. I think it's worthy of an S tier. And for Zoroark, I'm really gonna try to keep Pokemon out of the S plus tier, so I'm gonna move Zoroark to S, although I do think Zoroark is probably the best speedster in the game. Night Slash is a playable build, but Fake Attack is so good. It's the highest skill ceiling Pokemon in the game, skill expression Pokemon in the game, so where if you're good at Zoroark, you're going to dominate games of Zoroark. But even people who I've played against on Zoroark who aren't like that huge, crazy high, you know, skill level on Zoroark are still finding value, you know, just getting a few kills a game. But yeah, Zoroark I think is incredibly good, worthy of the S tier in my opinion. And now we have Meowscarada. Meowscarada, I'm between A and B. I think it's kind of very comparable to Zeraora. And just because Zeraora has Wild Charge, I'm willing to give Meowscarada, or I'm willing to give Zeraora the slight edge. I don't really rank them within tiers, but since we're doing it this way, we kind of can. But yeah, I think Meowscarada is a very fine Pokemon. I still don't think Flower Trick is it. Never really will think it's it. I think the auto attack build is phenomenal though. I think it has a pretty good Unite move. I think its passive is broken as hell. Other than that, I think it's just a really solid Pokemon, but I'd rather have any of these guys above it. But Meowscarada is definitely very good. We're going to move on to attackers, and specifically, we're going to start off with our ADCs, our physical attack Pokemon. Let's get those in. All right, so we have our 5 attack damage carries. I'm tempted to put Dragonite in with these guys. Let me know what you think about that, because I think Dragonite is more comparable to these guys than he is other all-rounders, although I guess the Outrage build kind of counteracts that, but the Hyper Beam build is certainly more of an ADC build. We'll I guess, compare Dragonite to the other all-arounders. But these 5 Pokemon, we have Cinder, Greninja, Decidueye, Duraludon, and Dragapult as our attack damage Pokemon. Cinderace, I think Cinderace is honestly an A-tier Pokemon. It's incredibly underrated in my opinion. It's just not, you know, you hear horror stories of your lane Cinders being useless. You hear, you know, just crazy things that Cinderace players do. But I think Cinderace is just very underrated. I think Powerball and Blaziken are both very good builds. I think it has a really good Unite move. Yeah, it's just a really solid Pokemon that presses A lot and has just good abilities all around. I think it's just very, very, very good. Greninja, however, I think is probably closer to C tier. You could talk me into B. Yeah, I'll give Greninja B. I think Greninja is also a little bit underrated. It's just, you know, again, you hear the horror stories of playing these Pokemon in lane, these 2 specifically, and it's like, oh my god, they're the worst Pokemon in the game. But in reality, a good Greninja is still going to play well. They do exist, I know, like they're very rare, but a good Greninja is still going to do well in the meta because Surf is just a really strong move. ADCs are just generally going to be really solid carries when the people who play them know what to do. And I don't think it's fair to rank Greninja super low, although, yeah, honestly, I think Greninja is probably C tier. I don't know, Greninja's a tough one because, like, you can still do very well in the Pokemon, but I think it actually is pretty rough. I think the Water Shuriken build is awful. I think its Unite move is good. And just with the amount of bulk and stuns in the game, it's kind of hard to get a ton of value out of Surf. So I'll give it C tier, but it's probably, I'd probably rather have Grin than Gengar, but like we're not gonna rank them against roles, or like I said, we're not gonna get into that because we'll be here forever. Decidueye, I think Decidueye is better than Cinderace, but I don't think it's quite an S tier Pokemon. I think Decidueye is awesome. I think Spirit Shackle is one of the best moves in the game. It's my favorite Pokemon to play, I think, Decidueye. That really matters for what we're doing here, but I just want to point that out. I love Decidueye. I think it's incredible. Great Unite move. And the thing that gives it the edge over Cinderace, in my opinion, is that it's actually a viable lane Pokemon. It has decent last hitting with Leafage, and you are very good at anti-stacking with your auto attacks, and stacking on this character is incredibly valuable, especially on the Spirit Shackle build. I think I see a lot of people talking about playing Leaf Storm over Shadow Sneak, and I don't understand why. Like, Decidueye already has awful mobility, so why would you take away mobility? It's like, well, if people get close to me, I wouldn't be able to push them away. First off, don't let them get close to you. That's what Shadow Sneak's for. Just as soon as you see someone on your screen, Shadow Sneak away. That's literally what it's designed for. Second off, if people get that close to you, you're not gonna, you know, really get all that much out of Leaf Storm. Leaf Storm doesn't do damage. Well, it does, but that's the thing. It doesn't do enough damage to really justify it. And then you're better off just spamming if someone gets that close to you, because you're dead anyway. You're deciduous. So I would rather just have the better mobility move personally. And the only time you're really getting a huge stun out of Leaf Storm is if there's a wall near. And I don't like basing my gameplay around, you know, having to stun someone into a wall. This is the same thing with Blaziken. Like, yeah, Blaze Kick is very good if you knock someone into a wall, but what if no one is near a wall for the entire 10-minute game? So what if you never get the opportunity to do that? That's my thing. So I don't understand why there's so much discourse, and it's not really like everyone's talking about, oh, you should be playing Leaf Storm on the Decidueye, but I've seen enough people say that I feel like I need to mention that don't play Leaf Storm bad. Okay, moving on to Duraludon. I think Duraludon is honestly pretty terrible. The only thing Duraludon is good for is just spam ripping objectives, and even then, like 90% of the time, that's a bad play. And when it does work, you're getting lucky. I think Flash Cannon is honestly the worst build in the game. Flash Cannon is awful, and that's another thing. Go back and watch any tier list over the last however long that I've been on that mountain for a while. But just in terms of raw damage, I think that's enough to keep it out of D tier. Barely though. I think Duraludon is really awful. I think it's a pretty free kill for literally every single other Pokemon we've talked about is a free kill on Duraludon. Like Duraludon, it has no mobility, no sustain, no stun. Like, I mean, it has Stealth Rock stun, I guess, but like, whatever. I don't know. I'm not a fan of Duraludon. You could talk me into D tier, but I'm gonna put it at the bottom of C for now. And then Dragapult, I'm still willing to give Dragapult S. Weirdly enough, Dragapult was like the most broken character in the game for like a week, and then it just kind of, people just sort of started not dying to it as much. I still think Dragapult is incredibly good and incredibly strong. I think it's significantly, I don't know if it's significantly better than Desi, but I do think it is like a step up from Desi. It has not as good of secure as Spirit Shackle, but Night Move is very good secure. I think it does more raw damage than Cinderace to bump it up there, and it has better mobility, so I'll give Dragapult S, but it's not, you know, that far away from A tier. Dragapult's not as bad as people make it out to be. Some people anyway. It's not quite, you know, the world beater that we thought it was, or that it was for like a couple of weeks there, but it's still easily an S tier Pokemon in my opinion. Let's move on to attackers. And by that, I mean special attackers. Because, yeah, you know. All right, so for solo queue and trio queue, solo duo trio specifically, this is going to look a lot different than what it might look like for competitive play, obviously. I feel like that should go without, I feel like that should be pretty obvious, but some people will see where I put certain Pokemon. This guy in particular are much better in competitive play than they are in solo duo trio. In my opinion, this Gardevoir as well is a step above those characters in solo play. But let's just go ahead and get into our attackers. I think Cram is a pretty solid B tier character. You could honestly talk me into A, but I think there are just so many good mages right now that it bumps Cram down a little bit, but Cram is really good. I actually kind of low-key love like a defender surf build, just pulling people into your team. It's kind of really fun. It's just like a tanky sort of, not really defender build, but it's pretty cool for that. I think all of its moves are good. It has a really good Unite move. I think Cram is awesome. It's just slightly outclassed by some other characters. One of those being A9. I'm willing to give A9 A. Yeah, I think A9 is A tier. It's just very, very strong. Does a lot of damage, does a lot of CC. Both of its builds are great. Yeah, it's just really, really strong. One of the best lane attackers in the game, bar none. I think just based on raw damage output, I'm willing to put it above Cramorant, but Cramorant is very good, but I think A9 is just a slight smidge better, just because I feel like I said, the raw damage is just a little bit above Cram. Venusaur in solo queue, duo queue, trio queue, I think is easily an S tier Pokemon. It's probably closer to A, maybe like high A tier, A plus tier in competitive. I think Venusaur is just an incredible jungler. I think both of its builds are phenomenal. Has one of the best Unite moves in the game. There is not a single bad thing about this Pokemon. The only problem with Venusaur, like, there really isn't any problem with Venusaur. Like, I just don't think it's quite to the level of S plus, but it's very close. I think Venusaur is one of the best Pokemon in the game, easily. Pika, I think is probably, you could talk me into like low B tier, but the Volt Tackle build is fine. It's really strong. Obviously, just being able to stun, like, you know, one of these Speedsters or something, or just like jumping on a backline character and just stunning them and taking them out is very good for that. Popping a Unite move into it, I guess you could talk me into B tier, but I think Pika is, it's weird because you're not really going to get a ton of value out of it all the time, because it's a character that really needs follow-up. in order to you know, just get some of these licenses, get a lot of these KOs that you see on Pikachu sometimes, and to get you can get a lot of damage on the Thunderbolt build, or just really any Pikachu build. Like, you'll get solid damage pretty much all the time, but in order to really chain KOs together, you need a good bit of follow-up. But overall, I think Pikachu probably falls somewhere in the B. You could talk me into like very high C tier, but I'm gonna give it B just because I think it's, you know, just a little bit, you know, above some other things. It might be the lowest mage. It probably is the lowest ranked mage in the game, looking at everything else that's about to come up, but it's still a pretty solid Pokemon. Gardevoir, you could probably talk me into S plus. Honestly, it could be our first S plus Pokemon, but I think just for now, we might come back and just move some Pokemon into S plus later in the video at the end. But for now, I think I'm going to leave Gardevoir solidly in S. I think it's incredible. I think the level up changes, or the early game changes to Confusion a few patches ago, the cooldown buff to Teleport, have made it a somewhat viable laner. As long as you have an EXP share, you're good, because once you get Psyshock, you're a really, really good laner. But I think it's probably the second or third best jungler in the entire game right now. It is incredibly strong. The Unite move cooldown is ridiculous after the buff, and just being able to use a really, really good Unite move so often is just great. I think Gardevoir is awesome. You could talk me into S+. I think it's probably the best mage. I don't know, man. It's tough between that and Venusaur, but Venusaur's not really a mage. Venusaur's kind of more like a brawler slash sniper, depending on what build you're playing, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. Gardevoir is incredible, though. Sylvie. I mean, I think Sylveon. Wait, where's this guy? This guy. I forgot that guy. I was like, where's the other Eevee? But I think Sylveon and Espeon are both probably A tier Pokemon. You could talk me into Espeon being B, but I think it just does more raw damage than Pikachu and Cram, so I'm willing to give it a notch above. Maybe. I don't know. Espeon's a tough one. Espeon's a tough one. I would put it here, probably. Again, we're not really ranking them against each other, but if I were to, it would probably be that. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm going to give Espeon B. It has better last hitting than these guys. I think both of its builds are great. Psybeam is really good. Future Sight's kind of a meme, but... or not Future Sight. It is a Future Sight. Yeah, Future Sight's kind of a meme. What's the... it's not... Psyshock. What's the other attack? Sword Power. Sword Power is very good. The one you don't have to aim. That move is very great. And then we get into Sylveon. I think the cooldown to buff to its Unite move is very good. There's a ton of raw damage with Hyper Voice. Mystical Fire is playable. Calm Mind and Drainicus are both good. Obviously, you want to play Calm Mind with Hyper Voice, but you can kind of play Calm Mind with Drainicus, or you can play Calm Mind with Mystical Fire as well. Wouldn't really recommend it because Drainicus is just better on that, but overall, I think Sylveon's just a slight step above, just more pure damage. So that's how we're going to rank those EVs. We'll go ahead and do Glaceon as well. Glaceon is easily, yes, it could be another S+ case, but yeah, Icicle Spear is broken, just incredibly stupid. Some of the highest damage in the game, and you don't have to aim it. It's stupidly overpowered. I hate it. Nerf the fuck out of Glaceon. Please stop. They keep doing this thing where it's like a tug of war thing where we nerf Glaceon and it's still really good, and then we buff the hell out of it and it's one of the best Pokemon in the game. And they keep doing this back and forth. How about we just leave it to where it's really good and not keep over buffing Glaceon for no reason, right? All right, good talk. All right, for Delphox is probably A. Yeah, it's probably A. I think it's a slight step below Gardevoir in terms of, you know, lane mage slash jungle mage with a really low cooldown Unite move. I just don't think it does as much raw damage as Gardevoir, but otherwise it's still very good. I think both of its builds are amazing, so A tier for Glaceon. Mew, in competitive play, it's probably still S. In solo queue, it's, you know, very hit or miss. A good Mew is still decent, but a bad Mew is like really bad. So I'm gonna give Mew the benefit of the doubt and say probably A tier, just based on the ceiling of the Pokemon. Like I said, a good Mew is like still an incredible Pokemon, but like a bad Mew is really, really bad. And in competitive play, it's still one of the best attackers in the game, just because you get your abilities so early and they're online, and they're like Electro Ball is just so strong. Solar Beam is still a great secure, even though its cooldown isn't what it used to be and its damage isn't what it used to be. I still don't know why they nerfed the Unite move, but Mew is still really great. If you know how to play Mew, you're never getting caught, you're never getting KO'd. So yeah, A tier for that guy. Next up, we got ourselves Shandy, and I'm also going to just throw Inteleon into A tier. I think Inteleon, again, in competitive play is an easy S tier Pokemon because people in competitive play actually know how to hit Snipe Shot. But in solo duo trio, you could honestly talk me into Inteleon being like one of the worst Pokemon in the game. Just because no one, first off, no one plays Liquidation, although Liquidation is still pretty good. It's just people play Snipe Shot and people don't know how to hit Snipe Shot. So just because people don't know how to hit Snipe Shot, people can't aim. Yes, I'm talking to you watching this video right now in Tuscaloosa. I don't know why I went with Tuscaloosa, but you can't hit Snipe Shot, so play Liquidation. But yeah, people just can't aim, so I'm giving it B tier just because the people who play it can't aim. And then Chandelure, it's just a ton of damage. Just a ton of damage. It's kind of like a mix of Gardevoir and Delphox. It has a worse Unite move than both of them, but better damage than Delphox, worse damage than Gardevoir. Has a little bit more CC built in with Imprison. I think Imprison alone and Poltergeist are enough to give it to A tier. And then you add in its damage with both Flamethrower and Overheat. I think it's an easy A tier Pokemon. All right, let's move on to supporters. All right, you guys ready for some controversy? All right, Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff's more of a defender. I think Wigglytuff's actually very good. I'm going to give Wiggly B. I think Wiggly's awesome. Very underrated Pokemon. Great CC, a ton of it. Really good Unite move. Rollout's a meme, but Sing is very good. Dazzling Gleam and Double Slap are both fine. I think Wiggly's solid. More of a defender than a support. We've been over this a million times. B tier. Mr. Mime also B. You can talk me into honestly like low A for Mr. Mime, but we're gonna give Mime B. I think Mime is just really solid. Again, more of a defender than a pure support, but it does have Power Swap, which can do some healing. Although I think just running Confusion Barrier is probably the way to go. Mime is just a ton of fun, great damage, really good Unite move. Just a very good lane bully as well. So yeah, I love me some Mime. Eldegoss. Eldegoss is S tier. Listen, you know what's about to happen. I'm sure most of you know what's about to happen if you watched my channel for a while and you watched the hot takes video and you've seen a couple of other tier lists, you know what's about to happen. But yeah, Eldegoss is incredible. Probably a better attacker than, like, it's definitely, I would rather have an Eldegoss do damage than any of these guys. Some of these guys, even like Eldegoss is that good at just doing raw damage with the A button. And then you add in the fact that it has great healing, great CC with Leaf Tornado, or even Cotton Spore. Yeah, Cotton Spore is the one that does really good CC. And then Guard. Like, everything about Eldegoss is phenomenal. Easy S tier Pokemon. Blissey. Blissy's probably... Fuck it, Blissy's S tier. Who am I kidding? Blissy's broken as well. Really good Unite move. A ton of healing. The anti-CC build, the Safeguard Helping Hand build still good, but Eggs, really good. Ton of healing. Great Unite move. Blissy's broken. Supports are broken. Play supports. Hoopa. In solo duo trio, you could talk me into Hoopa being A tier, but Hoopa is honestly phenomenal. Although I do hear it's bar none the best supporter in the game. Again, in competitive play, it's a little bit higher probably. It's definitely S tier, but in solo duo trio where people just ignore your portals, it's probably A tier. Like I've had Hoopa games where I've done like 6,000 healing because my teammates literally don't take a single portal for the entire game, and they're just like, oh, what's this? I'm gonna walk away from it. Oh shit, I died. Like that's happened more times than I can count. And I'm a Hoopa player, so trust me, I understand how people view this Pokemon on their team. A lot of my healing just comes from people picking up my berries. I do think the trick build is actually kind of underrated as well, but yeah, Hoopa's awesome. Play Hoopa. Yeah, Sableye, probably one of the 3 to 5 worst Pokemon in the game, and definitely one of the worst Pokemon in the game to have on your team. It's not a support. It's one of the most selfish Pokemon in the game too. It's one of the most useless Pokemon to have on a team as well. And yeah, every time I have a Sableye on my team, I'm not happy about it. And yeah, I think it needs a lot of help. I think you need to do something to make it feel more like a support. I don't know. I don't think Sableye's good. And I think the people who play Sableye are some of the worst players in the game. Now, let's get to these two. These are our first two S pluses of the video, and it's not even close. Clefable is unbelievably overpowered, although I hear if you just run curse items, it's actually just useless. So honestly, if you just run curse items on every single Pokemon in the game, Clefable's not even an issue. It's a dead meme. Like, why are you even talking about how good Clefable is? Like, come on, guys, it's not even good. Just run curse items. It's bad. No, absolutely asinine take. I think Clefable is incredibly broken. The ability to just keep an entire team healthy throughout an entire fight is wild. Clefable does legitimately too much healing. I like the fact that there's a character that can heal an entire team. That's really cool. It's like a Lucio from Overwatch, or I'm sure there's a ton of characters that have AoE healing in other MOBAs, but I don't play other MOBAs. But I know Lucio played a little bit of Smite, but I can't tell you a single name of a champion in Smite, although gonna play some Smite too when that comes up, but that's beside the point. Yeah, I'm sure there are a ton of characters with AoE healing, but in Pokemon Unite specifically, Clefable have healing as much as it does AoE healing an entire team is ridiculous. It's so strong. Oh, we haven't even talked about Gravity yet. Gravity is incredibly broken. You need to sit it down and it shuts down literally any dash. every single dash in the game is just completely shut down by gravity, which is wild. And I'm glad there is something like that in the game, because the amount of mobility in the game would be wild if it wasn't there. But they need to, you know, figure out some sort of balance between the two, because a move like gravity is needed, and I will give you that, but it's a little bit much. It's a little bit much sometimes. Follow Me is fine. Draining Kiss is a fun build to play, but Moonlight is broken beyond all belief. And if you don't think Clefable's overpowered, you're an insane person. Next up, we have Comfey. Do we even need to talk about this one? Like, I feel like I don't even need to acknowledge why Comfey is broken as hell, especially in uncoordinated play. Like, do we need to have this discussion? Clef's broken. Moving on. Or Comfey's broken. Clef is stupid. Comfey is also broken as hell. Moving on. All right, we got our defenders up next, and this is one of the best classes in the entire game, has been for a while, and we're going to go ahead and start off by ranking our boy Snorlax. I think Snorlax is a solid B tier. I think Snorlax is actually very good. It's just the problem becomes when people play Flail and throw your games, because Flail-Lax is awful. I think the amount of CC that you can do with Heavy Slam as well as Yawn and Block, both of which are some of the most overpowered moves in the game, is more than enough to justify Snorlax being in B tier. It's just, you know, it's a pure defender with that build. You're not really going to be, you know, doing sexy damage numbers or anything of the sort, but you are going to be having, you know, just great CC, great team utility. Honestly, Unite move into Heavy Slam, or Heavy Slam into Unite move, is actually quite a bit of burst damage if you land it. Like, Snorlax is kind of underrated. You can kind of catch some squishies off guard if you hit a full slam into Unite combo. Like, it's kind of a lot. But yeah, I think Snorlax is just slightly outshined, especially in uncoordinated play, because sometimes you just don't have follow-up and sometimes your team is useless. But overall, I think Snorlax is actually very, very good. Slowbro. Slowbro is an easy A tier Pokemon in my opinion. You could talk me into S still, but I do think there are a couple of defenders that are just slightly better than Slowbro. I think it has great sustain. Scald is amazing. Surf is amazing. Although I hear people saying you're throwing if you play Scald and you're throwing if you're not running eject button, which I'm not even going to acknowledge. But I actually hate some people who have opinions about this game. Like, oh my god, if you're playing Scald, you're literally throwing my game. Oh my god, if you don't have a eject button, you're literally griefing. Like, what are we doing, people? Anyway, not playing eject button on all defenders is actually throwing. You're actually awful if you play anything other than eject on a defender. What are we doing? What are this is opinions that people on Twitter have. And by people, I mean streamers and content creators have these opinions. Like, what are we doing? Anyway, getting back to Slowbro, it's very good. I think there are just a couple of defenders that are a little bit better. Blastoise being one of them. Blastoise is probably gonna stay. Yeah, we're gonna keep Blastoise in S+. Blastoise is incredibly broken. I think the fact that it evolves a couple levels earlier is very nice for it, obviously. And just being able to get evolved at that point is crazy. You get the big stat boost, and I don't even know where to start on its moves. Both of its builds are insanely good. If you're playing a squishier team with, you know, a lot of backline mages, or just like you're playing a Desi or a Duraludon and just a bunch of tanks, that's a free win with Rapid Spin and a million damage. Or you can just CC the crap out of everyone with Surf Hydro Pump, which I think is one of the most broken builds in the game with the amount of CC it does. Incredibly Unite move still. I think Blastoise is beyond busted. I think it's like top 5 character in the game, and that's why it's going to be S+ for me. Crustle. Crustle is, honestly, I think Crustle is really underrated. I think Crustle is an A tier Pokemon in my opinion. I think both builds are great for solo queue. You want to carry a little bit more, you can go Shell Smash. You want to lock down a lane, play Rock Tomb. I think Stealth Rocks is kind of whatever. Oh, I forgot Trevenant. Where's Trevenant? There's Trevenant. Stealth Rock is kind of whatever, but it's also kind of underrated. But then X is incredible. It's kind of like Snorlax Block, but does a lot of damage. Especially if you knock people into a wall, you can crit with it. Like, you can carry with Crustle. You can be a really solid defender with Crustle. I think Crustle is very underrated. And I just saw this while I was scrolling through. Has one of the best Unite moves in the entire game. Like, I saw someone make that point. It was on another tier list. And that tier list had Crustle pretty high. You can probably figure out whose tier list it is. But someone asked why Crustle was so highly rated, and someone said that had a really good Unite move, and that person went crazy, went ballistic, like, what rank are you in? Crossly's Unite move is useless. No, Crossly's Unite move is incredible. It has an amazing Unite move. Basically, it's what you picture Rocky Helmet, but it's actually fucking really good. It's kind of like Pain Split Trevenant as well, where it just reflects so much damage. People don't realize how much damage Crossly Unite move reflects. It's so strong. And then it also just does damage in an AoE around you. Like, Crossly Unite move is phenomenal. Just eject it to a backline and Unite. GG. Like, if you eject onto like a Duraludon or something, Duraludon is just dead. Because it's just gonna sit there, flash cannon you, and do a million damage to itself, essentially. Like, yeah, it's Crossly Unite move is great. Moving on. Mamo. Mamo is probably B tier. You could talk me into C for Mamo, but the thing with Mamo is it's just got a really good early game. And once you do get online at level 9, you are still a good Pokemon. Although I do think it is time to do away with level 9 Evos as a whole. So make Mamo evolve at 8, please. That'd be a good, really good buff to Mamo. So make that guy evolve a level earlier. But either way, a lot of CC, solid damage, lane bully, good Pokemon, B tier. They're just better defenders. Greedent. Greedent is awful. Greedent needs help. I don't know how you buff Greedent without making it overpowered again, but figure it out because Greedent is terrible. So D tier for Greedent. Goodra. Some people will tell you Goodra is broken as hell. Me, who is a more rational person, Goodra is an A tier Pokemon. I think it's awesome. I think if you don't know how to play against Goodra, you're going to struggle against Goodra. The main thing is just don't fight it in a bush or don't fight it by yourself, and you're fine most of the time. Or just run away from it. Like, honestly, just walk away from Goodra and it can't heal off you. So just kite it, just play around it better. But I still think Goodra is a very good Pokemon. Very solid both builds, very solid Unite move, very solid early game, demon late game. If you have levels, like, yeah, it's a good, really good Pokemon. Trevenant, I think, is also A tier. I think Trevenant has a lot going for it. Really good Unite move, one of the best Unite moves in the game. Very underrated. Well, okay, maybe not one of the best, but a very underrated Unite move. Great CC, obviously, with Woodhammer and Horn Leech. Pain Split's awesome. Trevenant is just awesome. Really good defender. Lapras. In 5-stack play, it's fallen off a little bit after the nerfs, but in solo duo trio, I think it's still fine. You could I think it's, yeah, no, I can't in good faith, like, looking at Mamo and Snorlax, put Lapras in B tier. I simply can't. It's too good. Incredibly strong. Lots of damage. Lots of sustain. Good Unite move. I think it's still an A tier Pokemon. And yeah, very good. So, A tier. And then finally, for our defenders, we have our boy Umbreon. And I think Umbreon might just park itself and stay in S+. You can talk me into it being S. Yeah, I think I'm in 5 stacks. It's easily S tier, easily S+ in tournament play. But in solo duo, you get a little bit less value out of it simply because your teammates may not follow up on your mean looks as much. But I think the Wish build is great. I think Wish is great. I think Snarl's great. Foul play could use a slight buff, but not really. I think it's still fine. It's just very matchup dependent. But mean look is unbelievably broken. One of the most overpowered moves in the game. So I think we can go ahead and give Umbreon S+. I don't know, because obviously, if you're playing in a trio, Umbreon is S+. If you're playing in a duo, even, Umbreon is S+. If you're playing solo and your team doesn't follow up on you, you can, you know, it can fall down a little bit. But in, like, the ideal scenario, Umbreon is easily one of the 5 to 6 best Pokemon in the game, so S+. And now finally we have our all-arounders, and I don't have enough room up in S+ to put them all in, so we're just going to drag them up from the bottom. So Garchomp going into B. You can talk me into A for Garchomp, but I think it's kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's in like a bad spot, but I think a lot of stuns hurt Garchomp. I think Mean Look just hard counters Garchomp. I think Garchomp kind of struggles into Clefable. Obviously with Gravity, struggles against, you know, just a lot of bulkier teams, although you will be able to get off a lot of damage. I don't know, I love Garchomp. Obviously, he's my most played character, if you know me. I think it's amazing. I think it's a ton of fun. But realistically, I don't think it's incredible, but it's just kind of mid. I think Garchomp is just kind of mid at the moment. Machamp. Machamp's a weird one, man, because you could talk me into Machamp being C tier, but like its Unite move alone, it might be enough to bump it up for me. But I think Submission is one of the worst moves in the game, and that's the build I see ran far more often, especially on my team and even against me. Like, I see so many Submission Machamps, and I'm like, why are we doing this to ourselves? It is literally awful. Awful. Bottom 3 build in the game. I think Dynamic Punch is still fine. I just general power creep, I think, pushes Machamp down slightly. Not a lot, though. I don't know. You could definitely still talk me into it being B, but I do think it's just a little bit outclassed by some of the other all-arounders, especially having to evolve at 9. So I'm going to give Machamp C tier. I don't feel good about it. It's better than everything else in C tier by a mile, but it's a lot like Gengar, where you kind of need a lot of levels, but it's just a little bit rough. Lucario is a little bit underrated in my opinion as well. You could talk me into B as well, but it might also be C. Does good damage. Extreme speed gets shut down so hard by all the CC. It's very hard to catch up to some speedsters with it. Good Unite move. Power Up Punch is still really good at just diving a backline and deleting a squishy. You can brawl pretty well with it. Is it better than Machamp? I think it's better than Machamp because you don't have to evolve. So yeah, we'll go B tier for Luke. I don't feel great about that one either. Charizard is terrible. Bottom 5 Pokemon in the game easily. Just does no damage. Plain and simply, just does absolutely no damage. Charizard is terrible. Buff its damage, and then maybe we can start talking about being decent again. But as it stands right now, I think Charizard is bottom 3 in the game, very easily. Well, we only have 3 down there, but there's, I think, only going to be 1 more Pokemon in that tier. So bottom 5 Pokemon in the game for that guy. And then we have Serena. I think Serena is very comparable to Luke. Serena is very, very good against squishies. It struggles, obviously, you know, getting stunned. It's shut down by Clef. Clef is broken, though. But has really good damage. Good Unite move. Very good at getting into backlines and deleting squishies. You know, jumping on squishy supports, just stomping. You can get a lot of healing off of tanks as well. Like, yeah, I think Serena is a solid B tier Pokemon. Just nothing super standout about it. Dragonite. So the reason I wanted to compare Dragonite to Cinderace, Screwninja, the other ADCs, the reason I wanted to compare Dragonite to those guys is I think its attacks, like its just basic attacks, are very good. Very, very good. Hyper Beam is kind of whatever. Outrage, I don't really like playing it Outrage in the amount of CC in the game, but it does a lot of damage. And pretty much every Dragonite I ever see is playing Outrage, but I really do wish more Dragonites would play Hyper Beam. I think Hyper Beam is very underrated. Really good secure still. Great at ripping objectives. I don't know. Dragonite's fine. I think B is fine for it. I promise we'll get into some better all-arounders eventually. They're just a little further down in the alphabets or in release order. AG. AG, you can honestly talk me into C tier. Do I? It's got better secure than Luke and Serena, so I'll give it B tier for that. But I think everything that Luke and Serena do, like mid game and during the game, outside of objective fights, actually, I don't know if I agree with that. I think Aegis Slash is fine. I just think it's kind of underwhelming. There's nothing that like wows me about Aegis Slash. It does a lot of damage. Like the crit builds are really strong. Wide guard is great, although apparently I don't know how to play Aegis Slash. Every time I've ever posted an Aegis Slash video, I get the weirdest comments. Like, I have a 20 plus kill, 100 plus K game damage on Aegis Slash, and every comment was just Aegis Slash mains telling me how shit I am. Like, all right, Aegis Slash mains are weird, and I have a kind of a vendetta against that Pokemon ever since. They happened in 2 separate Aegis Slash videos. Like, I just get the weirdest comments every time I post Aegis Slash, but it's, you know, a fine Pokemon. Nothing really super standout about it. Good damage, good secure, but there are better and worse all-arounders. It's mid. Azu. Azu's a lot like Absol or Gengar or Leafeon or you know, these other characters that are just kind of like assassin-y early game snowball characters. Like, if you snowball a game with Azu, you're gonna feel great. But if you get stuck behind on Azu, you're kind of going to be in a little bit of trouble. So, yeah, Azu's good, but again, there's just absolutely nothing special about it. So, B tier. Buzzwole, finally, we get a good all-arounder. S+ with a rocket for Buzzwole. I think Buzzwole is stupid broken. The amount of CC and damage that superpower and Smackdown does is ridiculous, and this is coming from a Buzzwole enjoyer. I love Buzzwole as much as the next high. It's one of my favorite Pokemon to play. It's one of my best Pokemon. I genuinely think I'm a very good Buzzwole player, but I can, like, some people get very defensive about their mains getting nerfed, and I know a lot of Buzzwole mains that are like, no, don't nerf Buzzwole. Why would we touch Buzzwole? Leave Buzzwole alone. Buzzwole's broken, guys. Like, I'd say that to sympathize. Like, Buzzwole is stupidly good. Has a great Unite move, incredible early game, and like I said, like, even if one of its builds is dog shit, and Leech Life, make no mistake about it, is absolute trash, Superpower Smackdown is phenomenal. Like, genuinely top 2 build in the game, top 3 build in the game. That's how good that build is. Crazy CC, you get resets, ridiculous damage, delete squishies, really good Unite move as well. Buzzwole, easy S+, top 5 Pokemon in the game for me. This is probably gonna round out the S+ tier, spoiler alert, but yeah, Buzzwole's that good, I think. Actually, no, it's not. We're gonna do that. Yeah, we're gonna do that. That's gonna round out the S+ tier. For Solo Duo Trio. Wait, no. Yeah, I like that more. Yeah, we're gonna do that. I wanted to get an attacker in there because these 3 Pokemon are broken. I think Glaceon is just not having a name is stupid, so S+. Okay. Tyranitar. It has this weird, like, resurgence of people saying it's broken. I think, you know, people were just looking at Metagross Shields like, oh, this is awesome, when in reality, T-Tar still, it's fine. The only thing that, like, I think is bad about T-Tar, again, level up curve, make everything evolve at 8, please. Can we get rid of level 9 evos at this point? A lot of T-Tars just grief their team because they're Pupitar at 4 minutes and they're just, you know, wandering around doing nothing. I think maybe even, I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, like, in terms of, you know, character design or, like, you know, actual Pokemon design or whatever, but giving it its second move at 7 or 8 would be good. I think, like, let me get Santum as a Pupitar. I think that's fine. Like, let me get Ancient Power as well. Like, even level 8, like, you buff T-Tar in some way, buff Pupitar. You don't really need to buff T-Tar, you need to buff Pupitar. Make it easier to get T-Tar because, like, Rock Polish is useless, and then, you know, Dark Pulse, or what is even the other move? Stone Edge. I've been saying for a million years, Stone Edge is awful. So a long ass time ago, they gave Charizard the ability to move when it casts Flamethrower. You used to just have to stand still when you cast, kind of like Gyarados in a way as well. Make Tyranitar, or make Stone Edge Flamethrower. Make it so I can cast Stone Edge and move. Like, that would be a huge buff. Like, I can just run into a team and just cast Stone Edge and then, you know, move and readjust Stone Edge. Like, I'm not stuck casting Stone Edge. Like, I think that would be a great buff for T-Tar. But as it stands, Pupitar's ass, C tier. Scizor is awful. I think Scizor is really, really bad. A few streams ago, there's a guy in my chat who was asking me if I think they should nerf Scizor, and I don't think I've laughed that hard in a while. So thank you for the laughs, bro. But no, Scizor is bottom 5 in the game very easily. It's gonna be at the bottom of this tier list, but I think for the sake of ranking the worst Pokemon in the game, we'll do that. Yeah, I think if we're actually gonna rank them, it's something like that. So Scizor is, I don't know, it's just not it. Not bulky enough, not enough healing, not enough sustain, and stop playing it in jungle. So I don't know, man. I don't love Scizor, so we're gonna go there. Shifu, we're gonna do both our Shifus. I think they're both B tier at best. Honestly, Water Bear is kind of bad. The cooldown nerf to Surging Strikes is actually kind of huge. You can't really double chain them together like you used to, but the damage is still there. Dark Bear, harder to use in uncoordinated play, but still does ridiculous damage, has a really good secure, so that's enough to give it B tier and a slight nudge above these guys, in my opinion. Still one of the worst laners in the game, though, so you could talk me into C tier just because people play it in lane, and Kupfu is, you know, it's one of the worst laners in the game. It's not the worst laner in the game because Dragapult and Gyarados exist, but it's one of the worst laners in the game. But I think both their Shifus are just mid at this point. Honestly, you could talk me into C tier for Water Bear, but uncoordinated players are still probably going to lose to Water Bear more than not. All right, now let's get into some more. Actually, we're just going to go ahead and drop Scyther here. Forgot about that guy. Scyther, it's more of a speedster than anything, obviously. And comparing it to Absol, I think if you do Snowball a game, or even Gengar, if you do Snowball as Scyther, you're probably pretty feeling pretty good, but it relies too much on dashes. It relies too much on its Unite move. It relies too much on resets, and it isn't as good as Talon, Dodrio, Leafeon. It's just not comparable to those Pokemon in the slightest. So yeah, C tier needs a little bit of love, but could be very, very, very broken with a buff. So got to be very careful about buffing that guy. All right, Blaziken. I'm gonna get hate for this, but I don't like. I know people think Blaziken is a godsend, one of the best Pokemon in the game, or really good, but I still just don't see it. It does good damage, but it's too reliant on being able to knock people into walls with Blaze Kick. We talked about this a little bit earlier. It's too reliant on getting the stun to get Overheat off. I've had games where people just don't get hit by Overheat. I've had it done a million times to me as Blaziken, and I've seen a Blaziken just walk up to me and press Overheat, and you just walk away. It's the easiest move in the game to dodge. And when that's your best attack, like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm willing to admit that, like, when you are hitting a lot of overheats, then yeah, it's very strong. But the problem is overheat is one of the hardest moves to hit. Like, I don't know, man. I'm willing to, like, admit I'm in the minority on Blaziken, but I don't know. I don't see it with a Pokemon. Like, I've never struggled against Blaziken. I struggle to do well on Blaziken. Sometimes, like, you still do good damage with the Pokemon, but I don't know, man. I'm not a fan of Overheat. I think Overheat is incredibly overrated. So yeah, and people will be like, oh, just sit in a bush and ambush people. What if no one walks by a bush? You can't plan for that. Like, obviously, yeah, there will be a couple scenarios a game where you can hit someone in a bush with Overheat, but what if you can't? What if no one walks near your bush in Rave Fight? What are you gonna do? Like, I don't know. I think it's overrated. Mimikyu, though, I think is easily an A tier Pokemon. You can talk me. Nah, you can't really talk me into S at this point because I think Buzzwole and Metagross are just better. But Mimikyu is still really, really good. It's another one of these kind of snowbally, assassin-y type characters, but it's just really strong all throughout the game. Shadow Claw is so good. Really good Unite move. Play Rough is not as broken as it was, but still incredibly good. Yeah, Mimikyu's great. A tier, easily. And then we have, finally, before we get to Gyarados, we have our boy Metagross. And I think I'm going to give Metagross S. So you could talk me, honestly, into Metagross being A, but because of the re-nerf to Gyro Ball, but I think the damage is still very solid, and the shields on Gyro Ball are just ridiculous. Unite move is still a bit of a meme, but honestly, once you kind of figure out that the best way to use its Unite move is just to eliminate a squishy and get the reset, like, it's actually pretty good for just like deleting one thing and like getting 30%. Like, it's actually pretty good for that. Decent early game. Getting Gyro Ball at 5 is really good. Getting Magnet Rise before you evolve is good as well. Like, I don't know. I think Metagross is just, it's an S tier Pokemon. Like, uncoordinated teams and with a Comfey Pocket is still going to be like one of the most busted things in the game, but in like your average solo queue game where you probably don't have a support, it's still a very solid Pokemon, so S for me. And then finally, we have the new guy. We have Gyarados. So we're going to put it up here for now. Obviously, that's not where it's going to go. So the thing with Gyarados is Gyarados itself is fine. Gyarados itself is solid. Like, I like playing Gyarados. Gyarados is fun. However, Magikarp is like one of the worst things I've ever done to this game. Like, Magikarp is such a struggle bus. It's unreal. I don't understand why you can only attack every 1.4 seconds. Like, why can't Magikarp just flop around faster? If anything, it should be flopping around faster because it's literally a fish out of water. So it should be flopping more. But yeah, the effort gauge is crazy. Like, I've played about 15-20 games of Gyarados at this point, which is way less than I played Metagross on release. But I think I've got it basically down to the point where I'm evolving at latest 720 every game. The first few games I played, I've struggled on it. I evolved around like 6 minutes, like right after Ray or right after first Reggie, which you don't want to be doing. And I've had a couple games where I'm evolved by 720 or before 720. I have a couple games where I've evolved around the 8-minute mark. I think the best way to go about evolving is just scoring, hoping you can get an assist, and obviously you can get a KO. But the best way to do it is just getting 10 points and scoring, and just hoping you can get an assist. I think the best thing you can do if you're playing with a Magikarp on your team, especially if you're jungling, is to gank that Magikarp's lane and try to get it an assist. That is the best thing you can do. If you have a Magikarp on your team, and don't like get discouraged, like Gyarados is a good Pokemon. Spoiler alert, we're just gonna put it in B tier. Just because, you know, obviously the early game struggles, but Gyarados itself is actually quite good. I think it has one of the better Unite moves in the entire game. But don't get discouraged when you see a Magikarp on your team. Help it. Like, because like I said, Gyarados is really good. I think we'll get to the builds in a second. But essentially, what you're going to want to do as Magikarp is score as often as possible. Try to get 10 points. Try to put it in. Don't run Goal Getter to do that, though. Don't run Score Shield to do that, though. Just score when you can. If you can't score 10 points, just score, you know, 5 or more. Just, you know, get that gauge built up. And like I said, if you're playing with a Gyarados on your team, gank its lane if you're jungling. And if you're laning with Gyarados, play like any of these defenders. Like play any defender and you'll be looking pretty swell. You don't really want to run like a dedicated, so where you can maybe play like Eldegoss or Hoopa or Wigglytuff or Mime if you're going to be supporting laning with a Gyarados, but you don't want to play Gyarados Comfey. Like you can play Gyarados Comfey, but you're gonna want to, you know, it's in like a duo trio. You can play Gyarados Comfey, but you're gonna want to lane it with like a defender or something else. Like anything's broken with Comfey, but don't lane Magikarp Comfey. That is probably the worst lane in the game. You know, lane well with it. Lane with something that can fight well early, that, you know, can A press, that can secure. Lane it with something like that early on, and then yeah, I don't know. Just lane with something that can last it and fight well early. That's how you know, can help out your Magikarps. And I feel like I'm kind of rambling at this point, but whatever. Let's get into the moveset. I think Dragon Breath is probably the better build. I also prefer Bounce over Waterfall just because I like the ability to get an Unstoppable. Although Waterfall is a nice dash. I don't like that I can't cancel it. I don't like that I can't, you know, use each thing like separately. Just make it Liquidation. Like make it so I can press it 3 times, but whatever. The only thing I don't really like about Dragon Breath is that it's basically just an auto attack build. It's just kind of boring, kind of bland. I like Aquatail. Aquatail is really strong when you hit it, but you don't really have a lot of time to hit the charged version of it, and you're just kind of a sitting duck, and it can get canceled super easily. Like that's another thing. Like it has like the Chandelure problem where everything it does gets canceled. So except for Bounce, I guess. But yeah, overall, I think Gyarados is a fine Pokemon once it evolves, but obviously Magikarp is a bit scary to see on your team. But don't, you know, abandon your Magikarps. Help your Magikarps, people, and you will probably be feeling pretty good about the Pokemon. That being said, that is my tier list. I'm sorry for how the end of this ended up going a little bit longer than I would have wanted it to, but that's okay. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know where you agree or disagree, and I will be sure to have that nice discourse with you guys in the comments, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take it easy.